Calling to order Silicon Valley Clean Energy Finance and Administrative Committee meeting to order at 1:02 p.m. Clerk, can we have a roll call, please?
Yes, thank you. Committee Chair Srinivasan.
Present.
Committee Vice Chair Showalter. Here. Dr. Scozola.
Here.
Alternate Director Risto. Here. You have a quorum of our committee present.
Thank you. Next is public comment. The public may provide comments on any matter not listed on the agenda, provided it's within the subject matter jurisdiction of SVCE. Speakers are customarily limited to 3 minutes each. However, committee chair might increase or decrease the time allocated. Do we have any public wishing to speak now? Okay, go ahead.
Hi, my name is Brian Mekachuk, and I'm on the board, but I'm appearing as a member of the public here from the city of Monte Sereno. And I'd just like to introduce Terry McCarthy to everyone on the board, on the Finance Committee and Administration Committee. And Terry is from the city of Monte Sereno.
Thank you. Okay. Is there anybody on remote?
No hands raised, Chair.
Now I'll close public comment and bring it back to the committee. The next item is consent calendar. Approval of minutes of August 4th, 2025 Finance and Administrative Committee meeting. Is there a public comment on this?
No public.
Seeing none, I'll close public comment and request a resolution.
Move to approve.
Second. Okay, thank you. And we have a voice vote or is?
I think you can call the question.
Yeah. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any abstain or? No, okay. Motion passes. Next is regular calendar, CFO update.
All right, well,
Is
thank
there a
you,
report?
Chair. So first of all, thanks for joining us on this holiday weekend. This is actually one of the most important meetings as we decide how we set our 2026 rates and a very important update to the budget. I'll share some details. As you know, our fiscal year ended September 30th, 2025 for the last fiscal year. We're still in the audit phase, so audit has just kicked off. The audit committee met on October 6th. And the auditors basically at that meeting presented the plan for the audit, and the audit committee reviewed the plan. And there were some recommendations made by the audit committee regarding GASB 96, and I have that as a regular agenda item. I'm going to go over that, so I'll wait till then. And also in terms of how the fiscal year closed, when I talk about in the agenda GASB 62, you'll get to see how our fiscal year ended for the last fiscal year as well, and some of the items that we still have to do as we close the year. Still closing the year, and then audit is kicking off, and audit will probably complete sometime around January or towards the end of January. We expect to have another audit committee to review the audit results in February. And as always, the auditors will present the audited financial results to the board for acceptance of the audit in March, which is also the time we do the mid-year review. And just a reminder that this is most likely our last finance committee meeting. Of course, the committee can always call another meeting if needed, but likely this is our last finance committee meeting for the year. So next year, as you know, the meeting we will likely meet in February. So February is actually when we kick off our budgeting and planning process, and it starts with our risk assessment. We go through a comprehensive risk assessment in the enterprise, and this is when we propose financial stress tests that we recommend conducting for the year at the February meeting. If you remember what happened this year, we presented those results to the Finance Committee sometime in June, and then presented it also to the board. And you remember the messages there that then flows into our budgeting. And as I go through the updated budget, a lot of the messages we discuss at that meeting, you will be able to relate to. So that's sort of the items I had for the CFO update. Any questions or?
Any questions from?
Thank you. I did have one question when it comes to the
finance meeting stress test, if you will, of February. Is it possible, I know you don't really know exactly when typically the meeting would be, but there's the President's Week break, and I just wanted to make sure that hopefully it doesn't fall into that, but I don't know, what are the odds of that happening?
Odds are very low.
Okay.
Because it will probably be towards the end of
Okay,
February,
great.
because if I recall, Andre can correct me, in the board will decide on the audit committee at the February meeting, right?
Correct.
I mean, it's audit and the finance
Okay.
committee meeting
That
members
makes
at
sense.
February.
Great.
Then, and also we won't have a year budget and all that completed earlier in February too, so
Thank you.
most likely it'll be towards the end of February.
I have a question. Does this committee get to see the auditor's report or comments?
We don't bring the report to this. The audit is presented to the audit committee. So the audit is separate committee from the finance
I
committee.
understand.
But it will be available, it will go to the board, so it's available to everyone
Okay.
before the board meeting in March.
The reason why I'm asking is if the auditor comment changes any financials, should this committee be
Absolutely.
available?
Yeah, we can discuss that at the February meeting. We can bring any such findings should we find that. And if, yeah, at the February meeting. Discuss that.
Okay.
But then we definitely will, most likely, we'll definitely have the draft financials. Audit will pretty much for the most part will be wrapped up. So we should be able to discuss any odd findings of the auditors.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments from the committee? Now, I'll open for public comment. Any public comment or remote speakers? Close public comment. This is informational, so no motion required. So close this item and move on to the next item. Recommend the Silicon Valley Clean Energy Board of Directors approve the proposed update fiscal year 2025-2026 budget and 2026 rate changes. Is there a report?
Yeah, there was a staff report associated with this. It went out with your package. Hopefully you had a chance to read it. But if not, I will go through it in detail. Don't worry.
No thanks.
No, thanks. Yeah, exactly.
Quiz.
Yeah. We have done this many times.
So, so I'll go through the budget. As you know, from our planning process, our annual budget is set is approved by the board in September. The audit and the finance committee met early in August, reviewed the budget proposed for the next fiscal year 25-26, and then the board adopted the budget in September. But as you know, the big component that changes between then and now is we have more information on likely PG&E rates for next year, and the PCIA, as you know, that's a big component of element that affects our revenues as well as our customers' rates. So that's why we do this update at this time of the year. There is one other item I guess I could have mentioned in the CFO update. We are also looking at possibly changing our fiscal year. And we're looking at maybe making it calendar year. There are some challenges with that. We still have to work that out. But we will should we go with that, we will bring that to the finance committee and executive committee, obviously, and to the board if we decide to do that. Some of the challenges in preparing this budget is we get this information very late in October, and actually there was corrections made by PG&E because they had made an error when they updated their rates based on some CPUC numbers that I'll go into. And then that information came really late in November. So we were struggling to get this budget out to the finance committee in time for this meeting, as well as the SOP report. So those are some of the challenges we have to still work through. So going into the budget, so this is an action item. We're asking that the committee review the budget in detail and propose and recommend that the board approve the updated budget, which also basically has a recommendation for what our customer rates should be starting 2026. 2026 calendar year. I'll go through the highlights of the updated financial forecast, compare it to how it compares to the budget that was adopted by the board in September. As always, we'll do a 5-year outlook on our reserves and in our financial forecast, and then we'll talk about how we decided to propose the rates for 2026. All right, so in big bold numbers there, that's the main highlight of this year's budget, update budget. So as you can see, the 5-year margins, if you remember the discussion we had back in August with this committee, the 5-year outlook pretty much remains the same. There have been ups and downs, but the 5-year outlook, if you look at the reserve forecast, 5-year continues to be negative under the business as usual scenario, which I'll describe in a minute. Which again, you have to remember all the discussions we have leading up to this discussion, the stress test analysis, all the uncertainty. There's more certainty now that we have on 2026 rates, but when we forecast beyond that, there's a whole bunch of uncertainty. The further out in time we forecast, the greater the uncertainty. That's just the way this business works. Any business, you can say they're forecasting anytime further and out, but particularly when forecast is based on what the market prices will be. No one can obviously predict what market prices. We use the best information that we observe in the market to develop our budget and financial forecasts. So days on cash on hand at the end of the 5-year period is close to what we had discussed in the September board meeting, about 150 days of cash on hand. The big update for the fiscal year, which is the budget that we're asking you to recommend that the board approve, is that the draw on reserves increases from forecasting negative 40 million to negative 60 million. So a draw of 60 million from our reserves to balance the budget for the fiscal year 2026, again, which started October 1st of 2025 and September 30th. We're recommending that we go ahead under the business as usual scenario, which we are defining as the way we have been setting the rates right now. Our rates are always cost of service based, we look at that. But from a marketing perspective, we found it was advantageous always to be at a discount, and our financials enable that. And we could be at a discount to PG&E. And that's a very clear marketing message to our customers. When we, they can easily compare our rates to PG&E, the benefit they get from a rate perspective. From a rate perspective, being with us, along with a whole bunch of other benefits we provide to our customers, obviously our mission and the decarbonization incentives. So under that business as usual, if we were to go ahead and continue to provide 1% discount relative to PG&E and continue to give additional bill credit that we give to our low income customers of $12, which basically, if you remember the methodology that the board had set, was take 1% discount that we would have given to all our customers, translate into a dollar bill credit. So that's about $12 for our low income care fare customers. There's about 26,500 or so customers in our service territory. Okay, and the reason we're advocating that, even though we're seeing declining financials as of now, again, based on a lot of uncertainty, is we don't want to make any abrupt changes to this business model. If you remember all the analysis, the stress tests we've done, we wanted to build reserves, knowing that such a financial outcome could prevail at any time, which we're now realizing. So that reserves basically is at a level that allows us this time that we need to basically complete the analysis that we've referenced before, and internally we're calling it, I guess we've also mentioned it to the board in public meeting, is financial levers analysis. So rather than just business as usual, there are a whole bunch of other things we can do to optimize basically how we serve our mission to our customers and the value proposition to our customers, as well as balancing that with the SVCE's finances. So we are in this business long time, and we can be in service to our customers for long term. Right? So that's what the financial levers analysis does. And that requires some time to work with the finance committee, time to work with the executive committee, time to work with the board. So that is what we're going to do in the coming months, starting at the December board meeting. And we're We gave some preview at a high level at the executive committee in October. Okay. So that's sort of the highlight, and now I'm going to go through the other slides that will hopefully add support to why we're recommending this rate for next year. So before we do that, just want to show you next layer of detail in terms of our budget. You know, how we went from -40 to -60 million. The big reason is decline in our revenues. You can see the revenues are down about 40 million. As you know, the big reason for that is market prices. PCIA, which is a big component of what our customers pay, is increasing 230%, forecast to increase 230% in January. Based on these prices that the CPUC publishes in October for market price benchmarks, which are used to compute PCIA. And then also as prices decline, PG&E's generation rate comes down. And I'm going to go into a little bit more detail of this in the next slide, but that's the main reason why our revenues are coming down. The good thing is that the reduction in power supply, the corresponding reduction from price declines in our power supply cost, basically mitigates about 25 million of that. And that's in part because we have, because we updated our hedging strategy, which the board adopted in adopting the changes to the energy risk management policy, where on an estimated basis, I can go into a lot of details why we have to estimate and why we shouldn't have to estimate, as to do with the regulation and the rate making of PCIA. On an estimated basis, we account for this impact that PCIA has, sort of like acting as a hedge on our financials. And we allow for that price movement. So we basically lower down the physical hedges we put on our portfolio on a forecast basis. So that enables more of a downward price movement. When prices come down, we can capture more of that savings in our power supply portfolio. Of course, the reverse is also true. If the prices were coming down, it would be, our portfolio costs would go up. But in that environment, our revenues would also go up. There's a lot more details to that. We went through that in detail, the mechanics of how that would work. We did the stress test analysis in detail. So if you remember that, and of course at the end, I'm happy to take any questions you may still have. So those are the main updates. The other big item is the transfer of 5.5 million to the building fund. As you know, we purchased a building. The set aside was 20 million in the fiscal year 23-24 budget. We did find a building. We were able to successfully close on that building in February of this year. We're doing some modifications or basically not modifications, but updates to get it ready to move in. Basically building out the office space and the board chamber. But the bids that we anticipate will come. We don't have the final bids yet. This is still based on an estimate, staff estimate. The bids are going to come in later, but we're projecting we don't have enough remaining fund in that building fund. We need an additional 5.5 billion to basically complete the updates necessary so that we can move in time, somewhere around June timeframe. So that's the highlight of how the adopted budget, or the budget we presented to the Finance Committee last time, has changed from what we're asking the committee to for this update and the board to approve at the December board meeting. Okay, so now a little bit more detail on the next slide on why the revenues dropped 40 million. So if you look at the rate, the first column there, 2025 rate, you can see that the blue box, again, is the rate we charge our customers. The orange box is the PCIA that basically our customers have to pay to PG&E. And this is for PG&E saying that they made commitments when these customers were their customers, and now that they're our customers, we still have to honor the market value of those contracts, and the market value goes negative. Basically, PCIA goes up for our customers. So that's that component. Then the discount we give, and then basically we're in good financial position to be below PG&E and offer our customers 4% discount on rate. And of course, last year we also gave a one-time bill credit, which basically brought effective discount for all customers to about 10%. So if you look at that and the 2026 rate, you can see the PG&E rates are much lower. Again, this is due to market price movements. And you can see the PCIA, huge increase, that's 230% increase there. Again, that's due to the falling prices, market price benchmarks, which now basically is saying that that portfolio that PG&E says that they procured on behalf of our customers is more out of the money. So when they have to go out and liquidate or sell, they're going to lose money, and our customers are still being told to be held accountable for that. And then that basically shrinks under this business, what I'm calling business as usual operating environment. That shrinks the blue box or the rate we're charging our customers. You can see a significant drop, almost a 50% drop from what we were charging, and that's basically significantly bringing down our revenues close to more than 200 million from what we were forecasting to get in 2025. So that's basically what's driving the financials. And this is, for those of you who've been with the SVCE now, this is a common phenomenon. Last year we had good news to share, and PCIA was coming down. And as we always say, always look at the portfolio, not at least 1 year, always 2 years. Part of this is because, when the PG&E sets the rate in 2025, it's based on a forecast. Its market price benchmarks are forecast. And then there's a balancing account that they have. So part of this is for 2025, they said, instead of charging 1.02, we should have charged you a higher rate had we known, had we had forecasted perfectly what the prices would be in 2025. So part of this is the margins that we collected in 2025, we're effectively returning it back. So that's why we always, at least at a minimum, look at our finances over a 2-year period. Of course, we look at it 5-year on a forecast, but very carefully over a 2-year period because of this mechanism. So we'll go to the next slide. So here's our reserve projection. Again, this is under business as usual scenario. You can see our target reserves that we always set based on the stress test analysis that we do. We said we want to be at a target, the green level there, of about 350 under normal business operating conditions. The minimum we don't want to fall below is 120 days of cash on hand. The maximum we've said is at 500. And this is something we review every year with the finance committee and the board based on our stress test analysis. So good news is over the 2 years, there's 2 bars, as you know. There's the light blue and the dark blue. The light blue is basically the funds that we have allocated but not spent yet. Most of them is for program dollars. There's always a lag of customer uptake of our programs. And as of now, it's exactly about 98 million in our financials. I'm running it to like 100 million. So we have some funds, most of it is programs, some of it remaining building funds. And that's basically the difference between the light blue and the dark blue. And until we spend that fund, the funds are still with us. So we account for that on our financial metrics. Because as we've discussed with the board before, the board can anytime, can basically redirect those funds. It's up to the board's discretion. The dark blue, basically, which is what we measure our compliance against those thresholds, basically takes that earmark funds out because the board has already directed us as of now how to use those funds. So we don't have to go back if we would exceed the 500 to ask the board how should we spend the money beyond what we want to hold for manage the risks in our business. Okay, so that's the business as usual forecast. That's that thing here. So now look at it at a business as usual with what I would say is some additional liquidity in our forecast. So if you remember the previous slide, if you looked at the 5-year forecast, the ending reserves, the both light blue and the dark blue was at 150. Right? But basically meant both bars were at the same level. We were not going to have any gap between what the board allocated. And again, on an annual basis, at a minimum, we are allocating 2% for the board resolution of our revenues to programs. So what the previous base case said was basically in the end of fiscal year ending 2030, we're going to hit the bullseye. Whatever the board has directed for customer programs, we're going to exactly spend all of it over a 5-year period. The two bars go together. But in a more realistic scenario, we're realizing is that probably will always be some lag. Right? So in this forecast, we're saying at least assume a $25 million gap between the two bars. Okay? And in the rare scenario, if the financial forecast were to prevail, as exactly we're forecasting, and a customer uptake were to increase, again, the board always has the discretion to move those funds. So we can, so remember, there's always that ability and cushion that we have. Under a more realistic, what I'll call more realistic or expected, you can assume some balance between, and for this revised base case with additional liquidity, we're saying assume 25 million. Then if you look at our budget, on the other than power supply expenses like salaries and a lot of the contracts that we forecast consulting dollars and contracts that we have, we always budget a cushion, a contingency on top. Part of the reason is to give operational flexibility, because if we budget salary exactly on what we spend, we do take into account expected vacancy rate. But beyond that, we still add contingency because in case there's promotions or for whatever reason we had to hire more people, it was needed. Same with the other operating expenses. What if we needed to spend more? We don't want to be in the position that we're always going to the board and having to amend the budget. So we need some operational flexibility, but over a 5-year period, it's reasonable to assume that we're going to spend more at an expected level and to take out some of that contingency. If we look, and so looking at our historical, how our budgets have compared historically, we always find there is that remaining cushion. So on a forecast basis for a year, we're assuming 6.5 million we can take out on an expected basis. So that's what I think we can call this with additional liquidity operating scenario or a revised base case. So under this, you can see instead of ending at 150 on the light blue bar, we have additional 50 days cash on hand, days cash on hand. So we're ending at 200. So the better financial outlook. Now we'll go to the next slide. So what we're recommending, and we've discussed this before, under this kind of financial condition, where we know that 350, the target, we always build the reserves to withstand some of these risks that we're facing, that we're now actually facing. And under these kind of operating business environment that we're seeing, and in some of the discussions with the credit rating agencies, we're still advocating that we want to target to keep that reserves above 250. We don't want the reserves to fall below 250. So that's sort of staff's recommendation based on the way business outlook looks, based on the discussions we've had with the credit rating agencies. As you know, we have 2 very good investment grade credit ratings. We just to let the finance committee know, we are meeting with S&P. They're reviewing our credit rating. That meeting is scheduled for December 3rd. It goes all well. And they're going to be we're going to be reviewing this updated financial forecast with them. So to keep under the business as usual, again, not accounting for the financial levels analysis, which again we'll be bringing to the board. Under this business as usual environment, if we were to target to end at 250, remember the previous slide we showed you, we were ending at 200, so that additional 250 days, if we were to charge a premium relative to PG&E rates, up to now we have always been at a discount. But if we were to charge a premium so that we can end at 250, that premium would have to be about 1.8% higher on average over the 5-year period, starting in calendar year 2026. Okay? So one question the committee may ask, which is how we prepared this presentation, is we're asking time to do the financial levers. What is the cost of that wait, right? So in other words, what would the impact on our customers be? Let's go to the next slide. So the next slide, we're saying, even if we were to stay with the business as usual, which will most likely not be the case, because again, we're going to have that financial levers analysis discussion and change how, if this forecast were to prevail, we will change. We have a lot of levers that we can pull to change the business as usual operating environment. But assuming at a worst case we were to stay at this, what is that impact on our customers if we were to not charge a premium in 2026, where in 2026 we go with the staff recommendation of continuing to provide a discount of PG&E, which is 1%, and a $12 bill credit to our low-income customers. Delay charging the premium starting in calendar year 2027 onwards to the end of the forecast period, that premium would be 2.7%, or roughly 1% or 0.9% higher than if you had started in 2026. So relative to, from a customer perspective, the impact is not that significant from a 1-year delay under these assumptions. Because remember, at the forecasted rate, 1% impact, for example, for residential customers is about 53 cents. So 0.9% of that would be slightly less than 50 cents. So that would be, as on a residential customer, the impact of an additional premium we would charge, having to wait 1 year from charging a premium, that would be a 50-cent higher rate. Okay.
Per kilowatt hour?
Per kilowatt hour. Thank you. Cents per kilowatt. Yeah. That's the dollar. Sorry, that's the dollar impact. Now, the rate not cents per kilowatt hour. That's the monthly dollar bill impact. So on a monthly dollar bill, 1% is about 53 cents. Say 50 cents.
With the presentation.
So if we were to charge a higher premium starting next year versus this year, the impact would be that the monthly bill, whatever it is, would be 50 cents higher. What it would otherwise be 50 cents a month, or about $6 or so for the year.
So if it was every kilowatt hour, that would be much higher, much higher.
Yeah. You can see how a cents per kilowatt hour on the previous slide was.
Good question. So we're comparing 1% below what PG&E is to going up to retaining the days cash on hand of 250 and what the rate would have to go up to. We also look at what if we did not exceed but met PG&E's rate and still offered the discount to low income.
It'd be about, the difference would be about 13 days of cash on hand. Because 1%, actually 2%, so maybe 26 days, 25 days or so, about $25, $30 million, roughly ballpark number.
I like the idea that we charge less than PG&E.
Yes, agreed.
And I hate to charge more, but
It gives us time before we can fine tune the financial levels analysis. The whole impact of this slide is that even in this unlikely scenario that next year, if this forecast were to prevail, that we would still go with this business model of charging rate throughout the PG&E, which up until now makes sense for us for a lot of reasons. But if this forecast were to prevail, we would probably change that because there are other scenarios as the financial levels analysis will reveal that we can adopt. But under this more conservative assumption, you can see the impact on our customers won't be that much.
Can I just interject something? Because I know so Amrit's mentioned the financial level discussion quite a bit.
Yeah.
This is a really important discussion, and we brought it to the executive committee kind of as a first go around last month, right? I think what our plan now is to go to the board in December to kind of kick off the financial level discussion outside of the mini budget discussion that Amrit's having today. And then we're going to have a special workshop on December 12th. Board alternates, you're all invited to attend that, where we're really going to go deep onto the value proposition and the financial levers, because obviously nobody wants to be priced higher than PG&E. But we have some real financial headwinds that we have to address as a board. and the community. And so that forum is going to be where we can discuss that.
Okay, good.
Right. So we'll go to the next slide for now, just to get into the staff recommendation. So again, this is billed under the business as usual, you know, charging rates relative to PG&E. For calendar year 2026, because even in that case, as I showed, the impact on customers is not that much. And again, we're going to have much better discussion as to how to change our business model. That's why we're recommending for 2026, give us the time to finish that analysis. So 2026 continue, because that's what we build the reserves for, and the reserves enable us to basically withstand the financial impact for this 1 year. 1%, continue to discount at PG&E, but bring it from current 4% and effective 10% that we gave this year. And when the committee and the board made that decision in March to give that additional dollar bill credit, we had this discussion, right? We knew the financials were coming down. We also realized that the customer rates were very high in 2025. The customer rates, at least our generation rates, as I showed you, is coming down by 30%. At T&D, we don't know the exact rate. We put some estimates in the slides, but based on late review, some of the T&D projections we put in the appendix, we may be revising because we may have gotten more updated information. It may not decline as much as we forecasted, but what we're hearing, it is going to be at least maybe somewhat of a decline from PG&E's transmission and distribution rates. But at least our generation rates are coming down 30%. And that was in recognition. That's why we gave that additional bill credit. We said, okay, our revenues are high this year, rates are high. We can lower our discounts starting 2026. But from a customer perspective, the bills are going to be a lot lower. So it's more.
And just as a reminder, the T&D is a transmission and distribution components of the bill that we have no control over. It makes up 60-something%.
Exactly. That was my next question.
Yeah. So that's the basis of our recommendation on this slide. I think the next slide is asking for your vote, but obviously before that, happy to take all the questions.
Okay. Thank you. So my understanding is I'm looking for some realistic options to prevent having higher rates in PG&E in the future. And so I understand it's other sad things that we don't want to do, perhaps cutting programs or taking away from the building fund, perhaps. But are there any other realistic options for, keeping our oath essentially of always being lower than PG&E?
So that is the financial analysis, levers analysis. We're going to have a detailed discussion with the board, as Monica mentioned. There's a special session in December where we're going to go through this item. So we're going to go into length about all those levers. Basically, how do we optimize? How do we optimize our mission? How do we optimize customer value proposition as well as SVC's finances? Because obviously we have to be in business in the long term to serve our customers and our mission. So we have to balance all those things, but we don't want to make that abrupt decision now. That's why, that's what we build the reserves for, give us that time. So we want to work through that with the committees, with the board, with the community in a public meeting and take, prudent steps forward.
And at that point, will we have a much better idea of approximately how much money we would need, in addition, just, more of a ballpark figure when it comes to we need this much money to cover the gap essentially, so that even if it's 0.1% below PG&E rate, you know what I mean? I would want to know the minimum dollar amount, what do we need to cover,
We'll always update on an internal basis. We update projections on a weekly basis. But remember all the uncertainty we talked about.
Of course, volatility.
We cannot there's one thing that's constant in our business, it's high volatility. The commodities we're dealing with. Same as asking you to predict oil prices for next year or next month. We can't do that. PG&E can't do that. If you look at PG&E's projections they put out in May, drastically different than the update that they gave in October. So no one has perfect foresight. That's why we do the stress test analysis. That's why we build contingency reserves, because of this volatility. But we will always do projections. We will always be forward-looking, but you gotta recognize we're gonna manage that risk, in that portfolio.
So I think what we can tell you though is if we wanted to not guarantee, but if we wanted on an expected basis to be slightly below PG&E, this is what we'd have to cut in terms of
Right.
expenses. But to Amrit's point, that only manages a certain part of our cost. The PCIA and the part of the portfolio that is always going to be exposed to the market is completely variable. And so even if we go into the budget saying on an expected basis, we'll be able to be at a discount, everything can change within the year.
Now, have maybe other CCAs done something like this, or is this a crazy idea? But like, if we do end up having to charge more than PG&E, can we, in brighter times, like, hey, we're paying you back. Sorry about that. This is very unusual times. These are dark times. Like the customers I'm talking about, where it's like, oh, we did break our promise,
But never made a promise, first of all.
Well, you know what I mean, though. Like, it's just that when I was just a humble citizen and I first heard about SVCE, what I heard was, why not switch over to SVCE because they're going to be cheaper than PG&E and cleaner, And I was like, yeah, why not? I mean, and I just feel like I understand it's a business in the end, but I'm very proud of this organization. I would like us to be as honorable as possible and not be a typical political body that, we say one thing and then, we do another, that's all.
So today's discussion, and I'm not trying to cut this discussion short, but today's discussion is really about what we're going to do for calendar year 26, because we have to make a decision because we have to put rates in place for next year. That's
I understand.
the charge. And the financial lever discussion is going to be, we'll have all that discussion. It'll be with all the board. We'll talk about a value proposition. We'll talk about what other CCAs are doing or not doing as well. Staff's really prepared to talk about that in December.
Okay.
And if you look at, one thing I'll add, is if you look at the appendix, there's a slide on the customer rates. If you look at their rates, the rates are much lower. Right? So at least we provided the discounts when the rates were high. Coming forward from a customer perspective, the rates are lower. And then also something that comes to my mind is what your financial advisor would say. When stocks are down, do they tell you to liquidate? And so you have to look at our value proposition to date. We've given something like, I'm going to make this number, but it's close to 200 million, in terms of discounts on the top of all the programs. So you have to look at the whole portfolio. You're in this proposition for long term. And then again, as Monica said, this is detailed discussions. We're going to go into financial levels, and there's a lot more to discuss and talk about.
I look forward to that.
Okay. No. Okay. Go ahead. Yeah.
Okay, I just wanted to talk about what are financial levers. I mean, obviously you're talking about things that are within our ken that we can control. But are we also going to talk a little bit about the things that one might expect in the energy market bigger than us that could change? I mean, for instance, we were talking at lunch, I think it was at lunch, about how one of the things in the transmission, the T&D rate is all of the fire prevention stuff that they have had to do. There's been discussion of transferring that from the IOUs to a tax or something. So will we be talking about some of that too, or?
So a lot of that we kind of put under our strategic focus area around affordability. Like, what can we do to influence good policy or good regulations beyond the part of the bill that we manage, including wildfire prevention and how to advocate for that, or reduce transmission and distribution costs in general. For the financial levers discussion, it's going to be a workshop style, so we can talk about many things. But the main financial levers that we were going to address were the premium or discount, preferably discount to PG&E's rate, program spending, and our clean portfolio, which is a huge portion of our expenses at SVCE, right? So those are the things that this board has kind of purview over, and we can control to some extent. The stuff outside, we can certainly try to influence it, and that's definitely part of our strategic plan, but it's really hard for us to make progress there that we can actually bank on and include in our financial projections. Yes.
I get that. I just meant in terms of us being able to understand what the variables are. There's a whole bunch of variables that, we're talking about as the financial levers that are within our power. And then there are a whole bunch of other variables. And I think that I'm not sure that I have a good understanding of that whole suite of variables, not just the ones that are SVCE variables. So that was what I was getting to.
Okay, so the big picture kind
The
of,
big picture
Okay.
kind of thing, yeah,
We can
that'd
add
be
that.
helpful to
we can
me.
add that to the discussion as part of the background and context, yeah.
No, I mean, I think based on the fact that if we decided to stay with the recommendation of the 1% discount this year, and then we have to go above PG&E in 2027, it's a relatively small change. And so based on this discussion, I feel very comfortable with the recommendation, knowing that on the 12th, there will be a robust discussion with all of the directors and alternates. So on the information we have today, I move to recommend
I have questions.
Oh, sorry.
Sorry.
After a motion and a second, we can still have questions and discussion, right? But
Yeah, but I have separate questions on that.
Yeah,
not on the
I apologize.
question. No, sorry. On slide 4, you had building,
Building transfer to the building.
yeah, transfer to the, isn't there a building fund separate from
Yes, yes.
this?
So,
Where is that?
so in fiscal year 23-24, the board set aside 20 million.
Correct.
So out of that, we bought the building in February, and then we've been working to basically make it move-in ready, right? Get it ready for staff, office, all that space in the board chamber. And basically by the end of the fiscal year, that ended September 30th, 2025, we had about 8.4 million or so remaining in that fund. But we were anticipating, the cost of building things are much higher in this environment. We're anticipating that when the bids come in for the office space in the board chamber, that once we have remaining and that we have been using since that soft close of the book, it's not going to be sufficient to meet that.
Okay.
So we're anticipating, again, we don't know the final number, but we're budgeting with some cushion of 5.5 million.
Okay. And then how does it add on the same slide, 60 million or 40 million? I'm trying to add the numbers and then it's not adding.
Yeah, so it should be revenues minus power supply costs. Then you take out the operating expense. Then you take out the next layer, the non-operating revenue, that would be a plus. Not an expense, it's actually a revenue.
Revenue, right?
Or
Yeah.
basically investment income. Because of the sizable reserves we
Right,
built
exactly.
and the way the interest rate market is,
Right.
it's actually, we're forecasting adjusted budget, I guess, a little bit lower because rates have recently come down, as you've heard from, and as you hear from the last agenda item. So that's why we're revising it slightly down based on a forward look at where the rates are right now.
Then the last question I have is 2027, the rates will slightly be higher, about 50 cents or something like that.
So
right?
with the proposal, we're going to give a discount of 1% relative. For res customers, that's about 53 cents or thereabouts, let's say 50 cents lower a month relative to PG&E. And for our lower income customers, it's going to be, we're going to give it another $12 of discount. So their effective discount relative to PG&E is north of 25%, I think something like 28%.
Okay.
And I just can correct me if I got that number wrong.
No, it says that additional premium in 2027 is 0.9%.
No. What we were doing there is basically how do we justify under this current financial condition what I'm calling business as usual scenario, basically giving a discount of 1% to everyone in the bill credit. How do we justify that? I said, well, under the business as operating, and knowing that we want to get it, we're recommending that we end the 5-year forecast at 250 days of cash on hand. Only way to get there, go higher than ending forecast of 200, add that additional 50 days of cash on hand is to charge a premium. So that would be about 1.8% as opposed to proposing a discount. So you may ask me why give you that 1-year cushion? I'm saying even if we were to continue, irrespective of the work we're doing on the financial levels analysis with this premium-based business as usual environment for next year, what would a delay cost? If we, instead of charging a premium now, it's 1.8. Obviously, if I wait to charge a premium next year, the premium will go up, having also given a discount this year, right? In 2026, this year being 2026. So that higher premium is about 0.9% higher. So that from a customer impact perspective, under the business as usual environment, the impact on a customer is not that significant, is what we're saying.
Okay.
But again, we will have better analysis, more informed business model than business as usual.
Yeah, my next question would have been price sensitivity, but then will we lose some customers if they pay close attention?
So
As Monica said, the transmission and billing cost is so high, right? And then that it will not come down, right?
So our competition is on the gen rate. So people will compare gen rate with us versus someone else. Those are all the discussions out of the levers analysis that we're going to be going through
Sounds
very
good.
strategically, that we'll be going through.
Any more questions from the committee
I have comments.
for the motion or?
Are we still discussing this? Yes?
Yes, we
Okay,
are
great.
discussing and then we'll have public
Okay.
comment and then.
I have some comments, just a couple, and then I am looking forward to December and the much larger discussion, but I just want to clarify for the record that I understand that SVCE never technically promised to always have lower rates in PG, but the general public, our customers, I don't believe they're going to appreciate that, or understand it. And then, it's like, well, technically, we never promised that, I don't want to be that guy. I think we have major bragging rights ensuring that we're cheaper and cleaner than PG&E. I don't want to lose that, and even if it's just for a moment, if it's momentarily, I don't want to lose that ever. So that's why I'm advocating in the much larger discussion that we think about this. And I'd like that very much noted in today's notes for this meeting so that the rest of the board can really see that and read that. And then I just want to remind everyone, I think we know this, but PG&E has mad money for propaganda. They're doing it all the time. They're commercials, and so I don't want to give them an excuse for them to be like, these guys said they'd be cheaper. Let's look at they're charging higher rates than us. I do not want to give them that opportunity, So that's my comments.
Thank you. No more comment from the committee. I will open for public comment. Is there any public wishing to speak on this item? Okay.
Sure, so I was making some notes and kind of questions. And one of your first comments was moving to changing the year, and I think that's a really, really good idea. And I think it would make a lot of business sense. And I would urge you to consider a Jan 31 year end, not a 12/31 year end. My second point is kind of a question. How does GASB 62 impact the earmarked funds in slide 6 and 7, or is it not included there? Could you not pull down some of those funds? Member Ristow beat me to the question on what's the days cash on hand if SVCE equaled PG&E's rates. And I think that's an important analysis to show the board when you do take it to the board at some point. And then this doesn't reflect it, or this doesn't include the impact of any increase in electricity demand due to AI or desalination. Those are kind of some comments with questions, and then I guess the final one is for the care. You said it's 250,000 customers plus or minus.
26,000.
Oh, 26,000. Okay. So that's $3 million a year. So it's not a big deal. I just went through the math. I was off by it.
Discount is less than 4 million a year.
And my final comment would be, I would ask that the finance committee support this staff's recommendation.
Thank you. I had a question on the fiscal year change. When when it's supposed to happen or?
We're looking at it. There are a lot of challenges, as we talked about, what it takes to get this rate together at this time of the year. So one suggestion we just got from the public is to move it to 131. We'll consider that. That actually may not as neat as calendar year, but it may make more sense for us from the way we budget and plan and the way the rates come out. Because we don't know the final rates in late December. These are based on forecasts. I meant to say this, it's in the staff report. The PG&E provides these rates. They're going to be vetted by the PUC, likely in the last meeting at December 18th, after our board meeting. Then PG&E after that will do another update, probably updating likely to the end of November balance in their generation portfolio. So we don't really know, but we've been following, we're also looking at the market right now. We believe this is still a good rate. And usually that movement is not that much between what we actually see the rates. We won't see it probably until January. So that's why January 31st may make sense, even February may make sense.
March 31st, right?
Yeah, we'll look at all those scenarios.
Okay, anybody wishing to speak on any remote speakers? Public, okay. That we'll close public comment and then bring it to the committee.
Thank you,
Motion
and
or-
apologies for rushing, I did not.
No.
I forgot about public comment at that late. Yeah, and I think a lot of the concerns are addressed. I mean, Director Scazzola's comment about wanting to stay below PG&E, this recommendation keeps us there right now. So that would be more an issue for what we do in the future. The $5.5 million to the building fund, basically, you won't really have numbers till January, but it sounds like this will get us close. And then if there has to be tweaks, that can occur later, but it'll be a smaller change. And so this gets us a lot of the way to.
We'll get us all of the way, plus allow for some buffer, some contingency.
Okay, so this feels like a very conservative.
So that when we bring the contract to the board for approval, we'll have the funds appropriated.
Okay, excellent. Well, with that, I feel very comfortable then making the recommendation to implement SVCE generation rates, making the staff recommendation.
Second. Oops.
Okay.
Didn't know what had to be read into the record, so.
No, that's fine, thank you.
We have a voice vote or, yeah, okay, all in favor, say
Aye.
aye. Any objection? Any abstain? No. The motion carries. Next is the next agenda item 4, implementation of GASB 62 rate stabilization fund. Available staff.
I think this also addresses one of the public comments, implementation of GASB 62. So we'll go to the next slide. So what I have planned for today is to basically do a quick review of what this committee recommended in February that the board adopt. The board adopted the GASB 62 in March as a policy. I'll go through a recap of what GASB 62 is, the board authorized criteria, and what we plan to do. And this will be the first time we're implementing GASB 62, so we do not have any balance as of now. So this will be the first time. And with the financial forecast that you just saw, if that were to prevail, this is one of the years when we can set aside for GASB 62 as opposed to any other year. And forecast were to prevail. Okay, so what is GASB 62? Again, first two high-level points there I've already talked about. So GASB 62, this is unique for governmental accounting, right? It allows us to basically defer revenues for future period, and then we can recognize them later when those expenditures that those revenues were set aside for occur. For us, largely in our financials, as you know, as I said, there's an earmark fund, slightly more than $100 million. Most of that, close to 98 million, is due to program fund. So if you were to look at our financial statements, nowhere you will see that the board has basically told staff to spend 100 million on programs, because in the financial statements following GAAP accounting, it's only the expenses that we have incurred. if we have not spent the money, there's nowhere on the financial statements that those balances are showing up. So we're using GASB 62 to basically essentially do that, reflect that balance on our financial statements. So what's the impact on our net position and financial statements? It will basically lower the net position or addition to net position for the year in which we defer the revenue. Okay, so this year, and I'll just give it away right now, under the soft close that we've done, and next slides will show these numbers, we're showing something like addition to reserves of like 121 million. So we want to defer about 100 million, which is in line with our earmarked fund. So basically what this means is we're going to reduce the revenue for this year, and in the future we can recognize when we incur those expenses for which we're deferring this revenue to. So basically making up for the prior years when we didn't do this. Yeah. So this is basically the board approved criteria. So the board basically gave staff the discretion. That's why this is a discussion item. We're not asking for approval, but we're sharing our plans as to what we intend to do for the fiscal year that ends September 30th, 2025. The board basically gave us discretion that, hey, you can defer up to the earmarked fund balance, which technically is 106 million as of now, as of the September 30th, 2025, provided you don't have addition to net position fall below 2% of revenues. And then you can recognize from this fund, if net position were to fall below 2%, and or to make the outstanding earmarked funds basically reflect the balance. I just make the adjustment so that the balance is consistent with what the outstanding balance of the earmarked fund is. So that's the criteria that the board gave us. This is how we plan to implement on the next slide. We'll go to the next slide for this year. So this is again unaudited financial statements. This was shared in the Treasurer's report from 9/30/2025. Things may change. Of course, one of the big things that's going to change is the GASB 62 implementation I'm talking about, which is not reflected in this basically statement of changes in net position. You can think of this as our income statement. You can see the addition to or changing net position for this year is that 121.7 million. Bottom there, changing net position. That's basically how much we're adding to reserves, essentially, from a financial perspective for this year. So you can see what this would mean with the 2% criteria basically means don't make that net addition fall below 10 million. So with our proposal, what we want to do, if you look at the total operating revenues of 471.7 million, we're going to add a line they call basically GASB or rate stabilization. And it's going to be a negative number. It's going to be 100 million. We're going to transfer out of revenue. So it's going to reduce our revenues from 471 to 371. The net effect would be the change in net position will drop from 121.7 to 21.7. Okay. Nothing is happening to cash. Money is there. This is just recognizing, deferring. This is all happening on the financial statements, which we think actually makes the financial statements more revealing to readers of our financial statements. Because right now it doesn't reflect, hey, what is that 606 you're holding for? Well, 100 million of that the board is committed to, beyond what we need for reserves that we can justify using our stress test. So that's basically the intent of it. And I just wanted to share staff's plan. Again, this is not audited financials. We're working with our accountant, Mar, who couldn't be here today due to a prior commitment, but that's our plan. And some of these numbers will change based on adjustments as we're closing the books. So that's all I had, but I guess that this is a slide in the appendix I can go through. So this is sort of like our balance sheet, statement of net position. What would happen is the cash and cash equivalents basically would stay the same because we still have the cash, right? But what would happen is on the liability side, we will have something called deferred inflow of resources. And that's where we're going to have a rate stabilization show up as 100 million. So the effect will be that the net position instead of 606, it's going to be 506. So which we think is more reflective of our true balance sheet because the board has committed that 100 million, which now will show, technically not a liability, but it will show in the liability section of the balance sheet. But again, our days cash on hand, our liquidity metrics is not affected. So that's all. This was a short discussion item. We just wanted to share our plans. There will be a change from the treasury report. We did note this noted this, that this change we would do. We would implement GASB 96 as the authority the board gave us in March of this year. So just wanted to update and happy to take any questions.
Any questions from the committee? Other question, this is reverse of Enron accounting, right?
I don't want to go talk about what Enron did.
It's off the record, but.
They have creative accounting.
Yeah.
So we don't have creative, we're transparent accounting.
So with that, I will open for public comments. Any public comment, any remote speaker? So this is just.
I do have, can I ask you a question?
Sure, go ahead.
So the GASB, I mean, it doesn't really reflect the income statement, so correct? I mean, it's.
We're gonna have a reduction in revenue, so that will show up. The change in net position will show up.
No, but it doesn't match what you've earned.
Yeah. The financials of the organization, liquidity, cash, still gonna be the same. Still, that 100 million is not disappearing. We're taking out of net position, putting into the stabilization fund.
You're taking out of revenue.
Revenues, deferring the revenues, and when we can recognize them in the future.
When you look at the P&L,
Yes.
so it's not matching revenue.
So
I understand what you're doing, it just seems, when you're matching where you're gonna, cash flow is gonna do more. I mean, I'm not suggesting they don't do it, I'm just trying to understand why
So we have
why they're doing this.
So let me try it one more time. We have 100 million that the board has allocated for program fund that we have not spent. So the board, from a budget perspective, has set aside all of that light and dark blue bars in the budget projections. That commitment is not reflected anywhere in our balance sheet. We don't reflect it on our balance sheet or on our financial statements for the year unless we spend its actual expenditures. This just basically shows kind of like a liability in the balance sheet. The board has set aside this fund of like 100 million for use. The customers have just not taken up. And when they do, we will basically recognize that revenue. So that then the revenue is going to be minus, but then income statement will be plus.
Let's try one more time. If you look at the, the income statement, the revenue is currently being reflected, was earned in the current year. And it's earned from the expenses that were incurred in that year. But you're going to take that money out of there because you are going to use it later on. Right? But the income statement does not really reflect on the profitability of that year.
By the way, most companies would do an income statement, yes, but on that GASB 62 allows us to do this. So that's, yeah.
Yeah, I know you're right.
Most companies will not have that ability in the private sector.
Do you understand what I'm saying? Okay.
This is public comment.
Yeah, it's a
Yeah,
public
sorry.
comment, yeah,
Yeah.
so,
Public comment. I'll stop.
Yeah.
thank you.
We went a little extra here.
Thank you. So this is the discussion only, no motion required with
Right,
that.
just informing the committee how we intend to implement it. This is our first year of implementation.
Okay, moving on to the next item, item 5, treatment of GASB 96, discussion.
Okay, so another item that I would have liked our accountant to cover, but he couldn't be here today. So GASB 96, well, Andrea brings up the slide. So this is something we discussed with the audit committee. And audit committee made an explicit recommendation, which we are going to implement. And And the reason I'm bringing it to the Finance Committee, this is the committee that sets policies, accounting policies. And I'm going to bring this policy to the planned February Finance Committee as a policy that the committee adopt. And I'll go into the details as to what that policy entails after I give you a little bit of introduction to what GASB 96 is. As it says, the background, GASB 96 refers to as subscription-based IT arrangements. It basically says, hey, in the old days, you build your IT software in-house, it was a capital asset, you depreciated it, it had a long-term use of life, just like a capital assets, right? We have a capitalization policy. Something very similar to this is done with leases, GASB 87, which we were doing up until now, because now we don't have a long-term lease commitment, because we're in our building. So GASB 96 asks for a similar treatment. Take a look at your software that you're outsourcing, basically like Salesforce and some other software that we've implemented from, if you remember the business process optimization. We went through some software that we have bought that has a useful life of more than 1 year. GASB 96 basically says, hey, that should be recorded on your balance sheet as a liability. Take basically the future stream, NPV it, bring it to present value terms, show it as a liability on the balance sheet, and there's a corresponding intangible asset on the asset side of the balance sheet. Same treatment we gave to leases under GASB 87. And the GASB 96 basically went in effect, I believe it was around June of 2022, June 15, 2022. The first year for us would have been applicable, would have been for the fiscal year ending September 30th, 2023. Up until now, we have not explicitly done this treatment described by GASB, because there's also something called materiality threshold on the financial statements. And basically, we had concluded with our accountant that it had not met that threshold. The auditors confirmed that, so we have not. So touched a little bit onto the next slide. So basically what we have done between then and now is we've gone through a very detailed review of all our contracts, all our IT contracts, and in the term and the commitments that meet the criteria of GASB 96. For the years that, as I said, that would have been, first year would have been applicable in the fiscal year ending 2023, September 2023. The second year would have been September 30th of 2024. We have determined they were not material. Our auditor, we were documented it, and auditors basically concluded that it did not meet the materiality threshold. Therefore, we did not have to disclose it. Go to the next slide. And materiality threshold, if we look at it relative to our net position, was very low. Even for 2025, if we were to continue with the materiality, it would not meet, we could still probably reasonably conclude that it's not going to meet the materiality threshold, given that it's going to be way less than like 0.5% of our net position. But knowing this is the prospective treatment that GASB is recommending and what we have to do, and this is a common practice in our business, subscription-based software, and the common good discussion we had at the audit committee and the feedback we got from the audit committee, we are actually going to go ahead and implement this because this is what we have to do going forward anyways for this fiscal year that's ended September 30th, 2025. So in the financials that will come out, audited financials, as I said, we'll make available to the board and public in March. That's our plan. You will see this item explicitly on our financials, on our balance sheet. You see an intangible asset, and you'll see amortization of the intangible asset recognized for each year. Again, we're not going to go back to any prior periods that were not material. There's no need to go back and readjust any of the past financial statement. This is all prospective going forward. So that's it. I just wanted to give the committee heads up. What we want to do, similar to what we've done on capitalization of hard assets, is a threshold we apply example, computers, like $5,000. Unless it's up to $5,000, we expense it. We don't capitalize it. Similarly, we want to create an appropriate threshold for IT software. And we're still analyzing what that threshold level should be. But we will, once we complete that analysis, our intention is to bring that as a policy statement to this committee in most likely in our February meeting to recommend that the board adopt the policy. The board the governing body has to adopt the policy. Then it will become our accounting policy going forward. So if it meets that threshold, we will then apply GASB 96 treatment, NPV, present value, that's in the liability side, we amortize. If it doesn't meet that threshold, we will continue to expense it. So that's all I have. Oh, I think I've covered the next steps.
Any questions from the committee? So I have a question. It says it's 0.5% of the net position, right? Does that mean that our subscriptions are less than 0.5% or how does that mean?
Based on the look that we've done, the IT software, if we were to do this treatment, the impact on a statement would be like less than, if you look at our net position, it's 600 million, right? So it's very small. Yeah. So it's not material. I mean, materiality, I don't want to get into the definitions of that, but it's not going to mislead anyone looking at our financial statement that being expensed or given the GASB 96 treatment. Knowing that this is an accepted package, we have software, we can continue to have software and implement the intended treatment under this GASB 96.
Yeah, in fact, most of the software are subscription based nowadays. Right? Nobody buys the full price thing. You also mentioned that you would recommend a threshold below which it will not be GASB 96 treatment.
Yeah, same as for hard assets, it's 5,000. We don't want to go through the expense of appreciating every little item that you can say this has a useful life of 2, 5, 10 years. You know, there has to be some threshold. I don't have that proposal right now. We're working on it. We'll bring that proposal forward. So it's not going to be. It's probably going to be like 100,000 or thereabouts. No commitment. Maybe 50,000 at the low end.
Yeah, there are a lot of AI software nowadays which are 5,000, 10,000.
Yes.
Thank you. Is there any public comment? This item? Any remote? So this is a discussion item, no motion required. With this, we'll close this item. Next is review of Silicon Valley Clean Energy for power prepaid transactions.
So you remember this committee gave us authority for this prepay. And I'm so pleased, and I'm not presenting this item, but I have someone much better, Zach Linsky, who is partnering with me throughout this process. So he's going to walk us through the results of the prepay.
All right, thanks, Albert. And you get to take the rest of the meeting off. All right. Good afternoon, everyone. Directors. This is a report out on the fourth prepay transaction that was just recently completed. It's customary that when we go out and do a deal, we come back to the Finance Committee with a report out on how it went. All right, we can jump to the next slide. So to recap, with prepays, the main goal is we're reducing our power supply costs via tax-exempt debt. It's non-recourse to SVCE. It isn't on our books. It's minimal risk. These are 30-year transactions. We target about 8 to 10% in annual savings, which should translate to about $3 to $4 million per year is what we aim for. Next slide. All right, and this is a review of what authorization the board provided back in August was issue bonds not to exceed $1.25 billion and execution contingent on minimum savings of at least 8%. for the initial bond reset period, which is about 8 to 10 years typically. And the bonds not be guaranteed obligations of SVCE, they're non-recourse. Next slide. All right, and so we closed in early November, earlier this month, Series 2025F of CCCFA, which is California Community Choice Financing Authority. $844 million issuance translates to about 11% discount and $4.6 million annual average through 2033, which is the initial reset period. Covers about 10% of our retail sales, and combined, all four prepays cover nearly 50% of retail sales and provide $19 million in annual savings during the respective initial reset periods. All right, next slide. So next steps on this, we will continue the administration of the different series, which is just typical standard monthly processing. And in terms of compliance with the bonds, we have to work with CCCFA on annual disclosure requirements. And then in terms of supplying the transactions, supporting them with clean energy, we have to assign new contracts into the prepays. And so this one has an initial clean transaction that runs through 2027. So we have some time ahead of us to get a new contract, new power supply resource into the agreement. And then, as always, we continue to monitor the market for when it may make sense to go back and do this again. As you may recall, we came to the Finance Committee in June to kick off this process. And so it does take a few months and can be very market conditions dependent, how often these happen and how many we will do. And yeah, that's all on the report out. Any questions or comments?
Thank you. Any questions?
Yeah, it says that we have a 1.25 billion cap. And is that just for this prepay or is that for all of them together?
That is just for this particular prepay, yeah.
Oh, okay. So we're well under that at 844.
That's right.
Okay. How much are the other prepays that we have collectively? How much is that?
Is that on that slide by chance? If we go back.
Probably the appendix. Yes, like something like less than 4 billion or so.
Yeah, I think on that slide, yeah, on the left-hand side.
There it is. Thank you. Yeah. Thank you. That's my question.
All right.
Any other questions from the committee? Okay, with that, I will open for public comment. Any public comment? Any remote speaker? With that, we'll close public comment and then no other question from the committee. Thank you very much.
All right.
So with that, we move on to the next agenda item, which is committee and staff remarks. Committee remarks first. I have a comment. Thank you very much. It was truly an honor, and thanks staff for making our life easier with sending us the material way ahead of time. We could prepare. Thank you very much. Any staff remark?
Yeah, I just want to remind everybody about this workshop that we're having on the 12th and the board meeting on the 10th. So the board meeting on the 10th, Justin and Amrit will be providing more kind of background and context around the financial levers. And Zoe Elizabeth will also be providing a little bit about our decarbonization roadmap, since that is essentially what sets the program budgets going forward. So those two meetings combined, I'm hoping will be a really good discussion. It may not be the last discussion we're going to have about this, that's for sure, but a really good discussion. And I want to hear, it'd be great to hear multiple viewpoints. It's a public meeting, so I expect there'll be some community there as well. We're bringing in a facilitator to help with this discussion, a professional, to help make sure that we hear all voices and we get, really constructive and good information that we can use going forward as well.
Thank you. I'll not be here, I will be in India, so I'll miss the meeting. So, very good. With that, we'll adjourn the meeting. Thanks, public, for participating. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you for your year of finance committee service. Yeah.
Thank you to everyone.